Let's take a look at a quick timeline. On Wednesday, government said that Putin would not attend the BRICS summit. Hours later, the DA filed papers in the Gauteng High Court saying that wasn't good enough. It wanted government to commit to arresting Putin if ever he was in South Africa, which government has now done. The International Commission of Jurists was also involved, arguing that the threat of war is not a reason to arrest Putin. And remember, President Ramaphosa had said earlier in an affidavit that arresting Putin could be a declaration of war and would be unconstitutional, since it is his job to protect the country. All right, we were hoping to speak to that organization, but for now we're joined by former ambassador and former director of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, chief of staff. That's Dr Kingsley Makhubela. Dr Makhubela, thank you for being with us. So this wasn't heard in open court, but government has agreed that if Putin ever steps foot in the country, he will be arrested. Is that a victory for the DA?
Francis, thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I was actually Chief of State Protocol.
Okay, thank you for that.
I was responsible also looking into the diplomatic law, the implementation of the Vienna Convention. Just a small variation.
No problem. Thanks for that clarification.
But Francis, coming to the pointed issue now, the fact that we as South African actually are able to drag each other to court to go and manage the issue that relates to foreign policy, it tells much more about how do we see the spheres of foreign policy as a country. Foreign policy, it's the domain of very contested views. And I think our founders who came up with the Constitution were wise enough to allocate the foreign policy space to the national government. For instance, there's no concurrence. But you would have seen statements issued out by the Premier in the Western Cape and the DA, what they are trying to do now. At the end of the day, they are harming the reputation of the country. That's one thing that should have better managed internally. But having said that, now that Putin is not coming to the country, the issue of the arrest, it's no longer valid. Yeah. And I don't know why it's still an issue.
So can I just clarify what you're saying? You're saying they shouldn't have bothered to go to court because there should be an understanding that this was a sensitive issue, a lot of diplomacy involved for government to get Putin to agree not to come. So you're saying that should have been recognized and the DA shouldn't have gone to court?
I'm saying a lot of countries, when it comes to foreign policy, there's a manner in which they handle them. You don't go and wash your dirty linen outside in the international domain, because the international space, there's no government. That's why they are saying the international space, there's anarchy. And that's where countries are positioning themselves. So there could have been a better way to handle it. It's a bit untidy. I can tell you a lot of countries have differences when it comes to issues related to the interests of the country and the foreign policy, but there's a manner of dealing with it. The last few months, it has been very untidy to see this kind of contested space. I mean, Alan Winde issued out a statement that should Putin set his foot in Cape Town or in Western Cape, you will arrest him. I mean, those are issues that you don't even say he has no power to do that. There's no power for arrest, but you can see it's a political posturing that you see. But having said that, we have an obligation, because we are a signatory as a country to the Rome Statute. In terms of the implementation of that, the law is quite clear.
Yeah.
The government has the responsibility to arrest if he comes into the country, unless there's a variation. And my own view is that we should have stayed out of this Rome Statute, because what it was intended for, it's not what it is. Permanent members of the Security Council are not a signatory. I think the only signatory is the United Kingdom. Yeah. But the United Kingdom has made it quite clear that the Rome Statute cannot supersede other convention like the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Immunities that would take place, that would take precedent. So you see, there's a contestation around how it should be implemented and so on.
All right, but you have mentioned something important, that whether we like it or not, right now we are signatories to the Rome Statute, and it wasn't only the DA involved in this. We were going to speak to the International Commission of Jurists, and others joined this, saying it's not about international relations or contestation, it's actually about clarifying our own law, because we codify what that statute says. So weren't they right to go and say, here you are, government, this is your law. Why aren't you willing to say that we will arrest Putin in line with our law?
But why do you do that when the man is not in the country? Al-Bashir was here. Once he was here, that warrant of arrest was activated. He's not here. He's not coming here. There's a debate going on here in the country. The bigger picture we are losing. And I agree, and I'm reluctant also as a citizen, that once the court have issued out the instruction and the executive is not implementing it, I think we're going to create a banana republic. But the manner in which this matter has been dealt with in the country, it has been a bit untidy. And it has exposed the vulnerability of the country to the outside world in terms of managing our own differences as a country. And that's why I'm saying there could have been a better way to handle it.
What do you think about government's handling of the whole issue over the past few months? Has that also been untidy? What about the president's handling of it? Because I mean, the wording was interesting. The president didn't say, we know that it's our international obligation to arrest Putin. Government officials kept on saying, we will abide by our obligations. Then it came out in the affidavit that he was saying, actually, he has a constitutional obligation not to go to war with Russia. So maybe keeping the wording vague meant government was deciding which constitutional imperative was more important.
Remember, even in terms of the Rome Statute, the head of state is expected to act in a rational manner. If there's a situation that could plunge the country in a serious conflict, in a global war, the head of state has a responsibility to protect the interests of the republic. That's what it is. The Russians have issued out a general statement that says anyone who attempts to arrest Putin, it will be a declaration of war, and they are ready to bomb anyone who intends to do that. Are we as a country willing to really declare a war on a country like Russia? I think those are things that would have been debated at that time. As you can see, Francis, the situation has been prejudged. There's been a lot of fuss around it. Putin is coming or not coming. At the end of the day, he's not coming. What we've been discussing about has ended up being nothing. But it has exposed how vulnerable we are in terms of dealing with any interpretation of the international law. The British have a similar requirement in terms, they are a signatory to the Rome Statute. But I can tell you they have a certain way how they handle issues related to their international obligation. There are a lot of treaties around the world. But we are going to debate in that manner. I think we're going to miss the bigger picture of being united when we go outside the republic.
My final question to you, as a former senior government official, is there a possibility that government got itself into a knot here? Could this have all been avoided if, as an initial release from DIRCO suggested, remember there was an initial release that was withdrawn, a government initially said that the invasion of Ukraine was wrong. If we had taken a stance early, could we have then said, look, sorry, we can't host the BRICS summit, Putin cannot come here, let's make another plan. It would have been simpler from the beginning. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. The government has actually handled this in a very untidy manner. The government is entirely to blame for the challenges that we see. Remember, when al-Bashir matter came up, the government later on went to say we are withdrawing from the Rome Statute. Then the ANC went into a conference and said, no, we are not withdrawing, we are staying. But this thing must be viewed beyond Putin. How are we going to deal with our obligation and being involved in conflict resolution? You're going to get individuals who are sanctioned by the ICC coming here to negotiate a very complex conflict. Are you going to arrest them before you finish the conflict? So those are things that I think moving forward we should deal with them. I had Vincent Magwenya saying that they are reviewing what elements of the Rome Statute we need to come up with some variation and amend our own domestic law so that we manage those issues.
Yeah, you're right. It has been untidy, is the word you used.
Very untidy.
Thank you for just looking at this latest court agreement where government says that it would commit to arresting Putin if he came, but of course he's not coming. That was Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, former ambassador, and he spoke about his role in the Department of International Relations and Cooperation.